Hello, students. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. Alden Bass, and I'll be your instructor for the short course on contemporary Christian theology. This is my first time to teach this course. Dr. Chip Cooey has taught it in the past, so I'm taking it over from him. However, my degree is in historical theology. My focus is on the early church, first 500 years. However, I studied all of church history and especially the intellectual history of Christianity. So I'm really excited about sharing some of those things with you in this course. I won't have video lectures every week. I do post videos, but typically not from me. I'll use the videos mainly to check in with you, to make announcements, and as a way for you to kind of know that I'm here and so that you can see my face. I do welcome your questions and comments, and so anytime that you have a concern, you can email me. My cell phone number's on there, so you can text me, and we can arrange to have a Google Meet or some kind of video conference and deal with whatever questions or concerns you have. Of course, I'm also happy just to chat about things. If you want to set up a time like that, I would love to get to know you. Although some of you I've had in class before, and I'm really excited to have you again. Contemporary Christian theology is mainly the theology of the 20th and 21st centuries, although to understand what's going on in the 20th and 21st centuries, we have to go back, really back to the period after the Reformation, which is generally known as the Enlightenment. And it was developments in that period which laid the groundwork for the most important trends in the 20th century. Now, Olson does, I think, a fantastic job of giving you the background you need. Unfortunately, it is a lot of work to try to cover all that background, which he does in the introduction in chapter 1, and then also to see the beginnings of a theological response, which you get in chapter 2, liberal theology. And it's really these three things which we're going to see are the kind of the triangles of all of this contemporary theology, which is these secular developments. We're going to see this liberal response, and then beginning next week we'll see a neo-orthodox or a more conservative response, and there's all sorts of shades of conservative response and liberal response. But those three pillars, the two kind of polarities of Christian response, and then these developments in the secular world. That's what's going to really define contemporary or modern theology. So what are some of those threats? Well, you're going to read about them, but briefly, just so you have a big overview, coming out of the Enlightenment, there's the threat of secularism, which is connected to the elevation of human reason and scientific materialism, also connected to something called empiricism, which means I need to see it to believe it. So as science develops in this period, the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, people began to question some basic things in Scripture and some basic things about God. After all, we can't see God, so how can we prove that God is out there? Relatedly, developments in psychology, beginning with people like Feuerbach, who you'll read for the first week, and culminating in Freud, suggests that there is a kind of hidden world, a subconscious, and that really shapes us. And one of the things that Feuerbach argues most famously is that God is just part of our own subconscious, that we've projected God into the world, but that he's actually just a part of us, that we made him up, that we needed him. And Freud will develop this idea as well. So science and psychology. Another factor is culture and cultural complacency. And you'll read about this in Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard was a fierce critic of Christianity. Christianity became closely aligned with the state. This is sometimes called Christendom. And as Christianity and politics had melded, and as Christianity became the default for society, it became weak, It had lost touch with its roots. At least these are the things that Kierkegaard argued. And people became complacent. They forgot about Jesus and who he was. And so Christianity itself is part of the reason that Christianity began to suffer because of this complacency. You also see a little bit in Olson and in the videos this week that there were great critiques of Scripture, particularly the historical events described in Scripture. Miracles, as Olson will talk about, miracles came into question because of scientific materialism. And then some basic things about the life of Jesus began to be questioned in what's known as the quest for the historical Jesus. People began to try to find out, what exactly can we know about Jesus? What can we have secure knowledge about? And then I would say a fourth factor is politics. Christianity did become enmeshed in some of the worst political movements of the 20th century, and we'll see this a little bit later in our course. But of course, Nazism is closely aligned with Christianity. The Catholic Church is implicated in Nazism. Christians are implicated in oppression in the colonial world, and this will lead later to the rise of liberation theology, which we'll talk about I think in week 6. Someone like Nietzsche greatly critiques Christianity on its politics. It talks about how it loves the servile class, and how Christ is the God of the slaves. Nietzsche advocates a kind of power, and he says that that's really what we should be about as human beings, is striving to be as good as we can. A great people, a great nation, to be great men. And again, he defined that by power, which is the ability to do what we want to do. And this was a pretty powerful critique of Christianity, which, says that we should give up our power, we should give up our free will, we should become slaves and servants. Nietzsche lies behind the rise of the Nazis, but also other political ideologies, any kind of authoritarian ideology of the 20th and 21st century. So Christianity was threatened on many sides, both within and without. One way we can sum up some of these things is a question of authority. How do we know? How can we be confident about our faith? And one of the things that we'll also see through the next few weeks is various ways Christians tried to address this. So for this week, you're going to be reading some of a document from the Catholic conference called Vatican I. And we'll see one of the Catholic responses is to say the church and the traditions of the church, that's the authority. Listen to us. We'll tell you what to do. This is actually one of the things that the Enlightenment was responding to, was a kind of Catholic authoritarianism. So the Catholics doubled down in Vatican I in a kind of Catholic fundamentalism. We'll see in week 2 and more in week 3 a movement to Scripture. Just trust the Bible. The Bible's accurate. Some people went in the kind of scientific direction of saying we can prove things about the Bible, thus bringing in a kind of empiricism. Others, like Barth, said we just have to trust it, a kind of fideism. So we'll see a variety of ways in which people turn back to Scripture and kind of double down on Scripture as a source of authority. Other people said, hey, we should listen to science because all truth is God's truth, and the discoveries of science, for instance, the theory of evolution, other sorts of things, should be welcomed by Christians. And this is part of the debate over culture. How much of culture can we welcome into the church, into Christianity? But there were a number of people that said we should use scientific approaches. We should use a scientific approach to history. You'll see a lot about that this week. And we'll use history to establish what God actually has done in the world. And then, growing out of the Romantic response to the Enlightenment, feeling, our human experiences, become a way to ground the authority. I know it's true because it feels true, it feels right. And this is closely associated with Schleiermacher, undoubtedly the greatest theologian of the 19th century and the father of liberal Christianity. Barth will talk a lot about this feeling of absolute dependence. Again, we just know eternity has been implanted in our heart. So there's a variety of ways that Christians are going to respond to these threats. And again, you'll see them over the next few weeks. Some things I hope that you'll pay attention to is how much of this world is still our world. We will come all the way up to the modern, or to our period, to our time, 2023, now 2024. But some of these things were a long time ago, 100 years, 150 years ago. What of these are still threats? Karl Barth responds to Schleiermacher really powerfully. But is Barth still useful for us? Is that still the sorts of things we're dealing with in our world? So some of you are involved in ministry, and I hope you'll be thinking, how is this relevant to my ministry? How is it relevant to the worldview of my congregants that they are soaking in through media on the internet, traditional forms of media, whatever. So think about that. Do we still have a crisis of authority? What's different? What's new in ours? In your discussion board, that's one of the things that I'll probably keep coming back to is, what do you see here that's relevant for your ministry? What do you see here that might end up in a sermon or Bible class or something that you're writing for people? I'll also just be looking for what stands out to you. What's your big takeaway? What strikes you? I hope, and Olson models this really well, I hope that you'll find something that you appreciate in most of the thinkers that we're reading. They are all Christian. You will undoubtedly disagree strongly with some of the figures that we're reading, and others you will agree with strongly. But I do hope you'll find something in all of them that you appreciate. And also, I hope that even in the people you like most, you'll be able to read critically. You'll be able to say, well, I agree with some things, but not with everything. So I'll be looking for that as well. Most of this work is on you in this class. You'll be doing the reading. You'll be taking your notes. I am going to give you an exam at the end. I want to know what you've learned. And I have given you some guidance with the list of key figures and terms, but there may be something that I didn't put on the list. I'm just going to see if you know it based on the videos and the reading. So it's really up to you. If I leave something off, not some detailed thing, of course, but something big, you need to know the material in Olson and the big movements in this period of time. Well, I hope that the course is beneficial to you. I hope that you get something out of it. I hope that it's intellectually stimulating. I also hope it's not overwhelming in terms of work. If it is, please let me know and we'll figure it out. Again, don't judge it by the first week, which is especially heavy. I would like for you to take really the first 2 weeks to complete that work because week 2 is a little bit lighter. So there's some grace on that. Also be prepared for the book review. I've asked you to read a book called Apostles of Reason, and that focuses, by Molly Worthen, that focuses on how a lot of these theological developments impact the evangelical world in America. Olson talks just a little bit about this. Olson himself is an evangelical. But I think what Worthen does is show how this ends up shaping evangelicals in the pews, in their politics, and in their everyday life. It's a fascinating story. Worthen is a great historian and a great writer. And I hope that you'll enjoy that book and that it's useful to you as well. Anyway, be prepared. You may want to go ahead and start reading that book and making some notes about it for the review in a little over a month. Well, I think that's enough for now. Again, good luck with everything, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care.